Okay, moving right along, we're going to be moving to Navistar. Now we're going to be hearing from Megan Pregler. Megan began her career 2 years ago after graduating with a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from the University of Michigan. Megan works in planning and operations, where she supports existing and new Auros applications, as well as plans, purposes, and implements various process improvement initiatives for the organization. After 6 months at Navistar, she led a year-long project to implement a new cross-functional Auros process, which is now used on every product development program. Most recently, Megan has been focused on leading the usage of Power BI inside the product development organization. And she has been creating automated reports and tools that connect information from numerous disparate systems. So basically, she's like a knowledge-aware studette. So let's hear from her now. Megan?
Is this on? All right. Hi, everyone. How's it going? I know, unfortunately, I'm right before lunch, so try to hang in there. I'll try to make sure I end on time, won't eat in it in your lunchtime. So again, I'm Megan Pregler. I work at Navistar in the Planning and Operations group for integrated product development. So we use the tools and processes to support the way we're using them, existing ways we're using them, as well as implement new process improvement initiatives. And today I wanted to talk to you guys about how we've used Power BI to create custom reports and tools to help the organization. So just to make sure everybody's on the same page and knows what Navistar is and what we do, we're a major OEM for commercial trucks, buses, and engines. We manufacture and design trucks under the IC Bus brand, the International brand and the IC Bus brands, ranging from classes 4 through 8. And we run about $10 billion in revenue a year. And we're located in Lisle, Illinois, right outside Chicago. So on the Auros side of things, we've been at this, I think, about 7 years, since about 2012 or 2013. Usage steadily increasing. As of this year, we have about 2,100 users in the system. And in the past year, we've added over 400 new people. So after 7 years, we've obviously had some chances to start using the system, and we've built up quite a few different workflows, so I'll walk you guys through some of them right now. If you've been to the conference before, this may just be a recap. I know Jeff's presented here multiple times and how we use it, but just make sure everybody knows what we're doing. So we started out with what I would call a pretty typical first use case of Auros. We started documenting engineering knowledge, design practices, technical knowledge in KPAX, and then started applying those using assessments for design reviews and before we released design changes in our programs. So next, we then implemented a new process for design verification plans, or DVPs, which we implemented, I would say, a couple years ago. And Jeff Mayhew, if you know him, presented at the conference about that a couple years ago. So that is where we use assessments in the DVP community to track and plan all of our validation and testing plans that we used to use in a legacy system. And part of that was also implementing a process for records of decisions, or RODs, which we use Auros issues for. So that's getting approvals from multiple different parties in the organization on different decisions. So the last major workflow we have is concept sheets, which we've implemented in the last year or so. So that became truly cross-functional because we started getting manufacturing, serviceability, procurement, all of those functions to review, give input on designs during the concept phase, and then approve them using Auros. So that was definitely making it more cross-functional than it's ever been before. Previously, it was mostly just in engineering on the vehicle side, as well as on the more technical, detailed side. So each of these deliverables has obviously their own requirements, their own timing, all the different teams that are involved, and there's so much activity happening in the system. We really just needed an easy, straightforward way to see everything that was happening. We had all of this activity happening across hundreds of communities. It was really hard to know what was going on, and there was no single place for someone to go, especially for management or leadership that don't really know how to go into the system and make reports, and trying to make that more efficient for people so they don't have to do what Matt was referring to earlier, where you export to Excel, make all these different customized reports for that. So we really needed a way to have one place and one standard place to see all this work happening. And because usage was growing and relying on it more, as a company as a whole, we knew we were just increasing more and more users, getting more and more use cases in here. We really felt the need for this, and we really grew into this challenge over 7 years. I would say we didn't really have this for the first few years when we were just doing design reviews. Teams were pretty much managing those on their own because I needed them for releases and all of that. And as we built more and more workflows into the system, that's when we started using this. So I guess I would say if team boards and methods and all of that work for you guys, definitely try those out. The way we had implemented the system coming into this, using this for 7 years, we didn't really implement them just based on what we knew at the time. We didn't really take advantage of team boards or methods, and we're also, unfortunately, like 2 versions behind due to our own IT systems. So if those work for you, we saw some great stuff yesterday in the advanced sessions, and I think those actually would have solved a lot of the problems that we had that led to this. But this also definitely does some stuff that Auros doesn't do, and it's not really created to do that, and I'll show that to you guys today. So given everything we had already set up in the system, we had all these processes and people were using them and very accustomed to them and reliant on them. We pretty much just had to find a way to use what we already had to do what we needed reporting wise on project status and all the work taking place across the system. So how we decided to do this was basically what Matt just mentioned they were doing with Click. We started getting data straight from Auros and getting it into Power BI. And if you don't know what Power BI is, it's just a data analytics, data visualization tool. It's actually Microsoft's version. There's a bunch of other companies out there that do this, Tableau, Click, as Matt said, all of that. So how we started is we actually started working with a representative from our analytics team in Navistar. So we would meet with him on a weekly basis, teach him kind of how Auros worked because he had never seen the system before, show him what KPAX are, assessments, how all of that works, the different fields, kind of give him the terminology. And he obviously had the knowledge of the data modeling, database side of things, how to do it, how to do the analytics. So we would work with him, weekly, get him up to speed, kind of show him mock-ups of what we were looking for. And then he worked with Auros KS to get the basis of knowing where the data was, how to use it, all of that, how to connect it. We did that for a couple months or so, made some mock-ups there. It wasn't really working for us, just because it wasn't fast enough. We needed more flexibility when iterating and publishing these types of things. And honestly, we didn't know exactly what we wanted to see at the time. So we would ask him for minor things, and then we'd see it, start working with it. And until you start working with it, you don't really know what you need to change. So as we used it, we say, oh, no, that doesn't work. We need this here. And it just wasn't fast enough for us. So we knew we needed to build this capability into our internal team, have someone with the knowledge of what we use Auros for, how it works, all of that, to start creating these things. Plus, once we started using them, we saw all the possibilities that we could use this for. Again, we use Auros. We use all the functions of Auros, KPAX, assessments, issues, all of that. So we knew once the first use case we started using that, we definitely saw we could fill a bunch of gaps and use it for a bunch of different things, and we knew we weren't going to have the resources from that team to do it, so decided to build it into our own team. Also at Navistar, our analytics team that's under IT was trying to push these types of tools down through the organization and get teams to start doing automated reporting in their own so that they're not the only teams that can support that. Kind of like Auros tries to get the process owners to own it and implement Auros, they're trying to get the people that know the data, understand the data and the use cases and what they're trying to create the reports for, try to get those people to develop them and publish that type of stuff. So with that, we decided to go on the endeavor of learning this ourselves, not just Power BI, but data modeling, which I will say is quite a bit of work if you don't already have that knowledge and that ability in your team. It's definitely something that's going to take time and effort to do if you have never done anything like that. It's nothing like the user interface that you're used to in Auros. I was very naive at the time, thinking it was going to be very straightforward. Oh, you know, in Excel, you kind of have like 4 or 5 tabs, that's it. No, there's hundreds of tables that are connected in all these different ways that Auros knows, but you wouldn't know as the user. So we picked that up, started learning. So in general, learning data modeling and SQL queries and all of that. We worked with the guys from Auros KS. So Josh and Sangeeta, thank you for being patient with us as we learned that. We worked with them pretty closely at first to say, here's a mock-up of what we're looking for. How do we get that from the databases? So they would send us back exact table names, field names, how they were connected, all the relationships. And then we started picking up on it, seeing the patterns, all of that. And I think right now we're pretty self-sufficient. Every now and then there's a piece of information we haven't used before, like chapters in a KPAX or something like that. Something very specific that we'll ask about. But other than that, I think pretty much built up the capability in our team and have reports on almost every piece of the system and pretty much can make whatever we want. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, and given our 7-year journey, this is just where we ended up with. And I think if you're just starting out with Auros, I don't think this is really necessary. We used the standard reports from Auros for years, the summary reports and bar charts and pie charts. And just at some point, when you get to implementing this in your organization, probably get to the point where you need to see it very customized and decide what you want to do with it. So now to the fun part, what I think is the fun part. We'll look at actually some of the reports and tools that we developed. Obviously, we started with the Auros data. We've actually expanded now into a bunch of other systems that we use at Navistar and getting data out of those and connecting them all together. But today I'll focus on the Auros pieces of it. And I'll start with the simplest ones, and we can work our way up to the most complex. So this is the simplest, most straightforward report we have from using Auros data. So it's basically just listing out all of the KPAX that have been published or updated in the last certain period of time, whatever you pick. So as Jeff and a lot of other people talked about yesterday, knowledge reuse is a big part of Auros. You don't want this, when you have knowledge, you want people to use it as much as possible, and you don't want people documenting the same knowledge over and over again, or worse, documenting similar knowledge with conflicting information. So people in Navistar wanted to know what was being published, what was being written, what knowledge was being captured, and how they could use it. Previously, we were exporting these across COPs and sending out mass emails of, hey, here's what's new. Some people paid attention, some people didn't. Now this is just an automated report. Anybody in the company can go in there, pick their time period, last week, day, year, whatever it may be. They only want to see certain COPs. They only want to see certain KPAX types. Only want to see the new versus the revisions. They can pick whatever they want. Any of that data that goes along with KPAX, we can give to people and allow them to decide what they want to see, which is pretty cool. And then how groups are using this is mostly their team leads come in here and decide if the new KPAX impact their team. So they assess that, and then they can know whether they want to pull the KPAX and start using them inside their own groups, which is pretty useful. So that was a pretty basic report. This one adds a few more functions to it. With how we implemented Auros and all the different groups and all the different processes we had, people needed to see all of their stuff, everything that they were responsible for across the entire system. So it was across multiple COPs and across, obviously, a lot of different programs. And there just wasn't an easy way for them to see everything and all of the other metadata that they wanted to see along with it. We have extended elements on KPAX assessments and all of that, they really needed to see it all in one succinct place and make it easy and automated so that they don't have to export every month to do this type of thing. So basically what it is we have KPAX issues and assessments. It's just an automated report that shows everything along with it. They also wanted, that particular data to help them prioritize and plan their work and see how everything was going. We show a bunch of different things. So for KPAX, for example, we show KPAX vitality, which I don't know if we talked about yesterday, but it's basically just the health of the KPAX, which Auros calculates itself. Can show how many days KPAX have been opened but not published, which just means that work's not getting done and that knowledge isn't getting used. So things like that to just try and help people know what's going on without them having to know what to look for. It's just displayed right there in front of them, and it's just that easy. For like issues, we just show count by issue type, how long the issues have been open, and they can pick whether they want to see just the issues that they're assigned to, or they also want to see the ones they created, or the ones where they're just interested party or copied on it. So it's pretty flexible for what they want to do. And one cool thing about this report is because we have design release assessments that are tied to our release system where we do our component releases. They're both tied by a release number, and we can pull data from both Auros and that system to show that information together. So instead of having APIs or anything that push dates back and forth between systems or having to totally change where we store dates and how people plan their releases and all of that, we can use Power BI to show the planned release date or the due date next to the assessment that it's tied to, just based on that release number. So teams are using this to prioritize their assessments and what needs to be worked on in the team, just based on the release dates, which is pretty cool. And we also show the percentage completion or incompletion of these things. So it just makes it that much easier for teams to say this release is coming up in 5 days and we're only 20% done with it. Probably need to have a conversation, figure out if we're going to be done in time, what's happening with all that. So just helping drive those conversations, helping drive planning and prioritizing that work. And what's cool about this one is that it's not a separate tracking tool. We have some workflows where people are being asked to put in percentage completion and all of that along the way. This is just tracked automatically by the work getting done in the system. So it's not any extra work that somebody has to remember to go update a value somewhere and all of that. So right now this just shows data from Auros and that release system, but eventually we're working to add in more and more of these systems so that it's just one place to go for a team, for a manager, for even an individual user to just see everything that they have, all of their work that's assigned to them, so that they don't have to go into 5 or 10 different systems every day and see what's assigned to me, what's coming up next. Can give them that easy dashboard of what all is on their plate. So the next one is Auros technical memory maturity. So we created this to try and answer a question from our senior VP who kept asking, how is Auros going? How good is it? After 7 years, is it going well? Are we using it the right way? Is it making a difference? So that's basically why we created it. And this gives a high-level measure of the maturity of each COP and then lists out who is in charge of that area, who's the contact for that, who's leading that area of knowledge, how's it going, that type of thing. So we knew we wanted to combine a few different variables or measures to give that holistic and objective measurement of how each of the teams were doing. So we mainly use the COP vitality. So like I said, there's KPAX vitality, which is basically the health of the KPAX. The COP vitality just summarizes that for all of the KPAX in that COP. So that's the main component we use, and that's automatically calculated by Auros based on a number of different variables, so we didn't have to calculate that ourselves. And people could then, it'd be easier for users to see that vitality in the system and everything matched rather than us creating our own very specific calculation. The other two things we added were disputed KPAX. So disputed KPAX is just a KPAX status of disputed. And we basically use that in Navistar to signify when a KPAX needs to be updated. We know there's something maybe not right with it or there's not enough information. That typically happens when we help groups import this information through Excel, either from like a legacy system or an old Excel checklist that we're trying to obsolete. We help them import it. We notice there's not much information, or we want them to double check it before it starts getting used. We mark it as a disputed status. So obviously you don't want any of those in a COP, so that's also one of the main measurements. And one of the other ones we added was KPAX requests that are assigned to that team. So KPAX requests are just an issue of issue type KPAX request. And it's basically someone raising an issue saying that there is a KPAX that needs to be written. We see a gap. We don't have that tracked today or captured today. Or an existing KPAX just needs to be updated with new information or new values and stuff like that. So obviously we want to be closing that and getting the new knowledge captured and updated so that Auros is the best tool for the most up-to-date information. And so this gives that holistic view of how each group is doing that's mostly used on I would say a management level, although we also have a different view in the same report where more on the working level, the team leads can go in, pick their group, and can see a list of details of what is open, why is their vitality not as high as it could be, what they need to do to clean it up and to improve how they're doing. So like KPAX past their sunset date, if you guys know what any of that is, it tells them, hey, you need to rejuvenate this, which will help your vitality increase. Here's all the disputed KPAX. Here's all the KPAX request issues that you need to get closed. So it's just a one-stop shop, easy place to say if you want to improve, which we have management looking at this, so they obviously do. This is one place they can go easily to just say, here's all the stuff we can work on and should be better over a week or so. And then this just defines for them what they should be keeping up with on a regular basis, like KPAX that are being pushed to them, but they're not pulling them. This is a little inside baseball for anybody that doesn't know Auros, but people are trying to share knowledge with each other, and we need to be keeping up on saying, yes, that is applicable to me and start using it, or just saying, no, this actually doesn't apply to me, thanks though. So for the next report for concept sheets, I'll give you guys a little bit of background on the process first, because this is new. We implemented this in the last year or so. So concept sheets are basically just Excel files that document design changes in the concept phase, early on concepts of what we're going to change in one of our product development programs. Previously, approvals for these were tracked in all different ways. We have people typing in their name in a cell in an Excel file, like you can know who did that or when, or if somebody else typed in their name. We have people sending emails, sending phone calls, stopping people in the hallway and being like, remember, I approved that. So we had engineering program managers trying to track all of this in Excel. We can have over 10 approvals on a concept. On some programs, we have over hundreds of concepts. So we had one person on a program trying to track over 1,000 different cells in Excel. Try to track dates and notes and whether people have approved or not, and color coding cells, and everybody had their own way of doing it, obviously. There's no standard way of doing that or controlling it through Excel. So what we did is there's basically an assessment for every concept that we have. So on those programs, if there's 70 concepts, we have 70 different assessments. And in each of those assessments, there's a line item or a row for every function that approves. So we get manufacturing, serviceability, reliability and quality, the costing group. All of those people give input requirements early on so that we know we're all aligned in the program moving forward. And we get them to review and approve these through their line items. So they just click approve or deny, all of that, enter any comments. It's all tracked in the system. And then we just pull that data into Power BI from Auros to give that high-level, easy program view of where are we at, where are the problems, what's going on. So as you can see, the yellow ones, draw your eyes to them. I promise if it had red, you would see those ones really easily too. So it just drives the conversations where they need to happen, focuses those discussions on where we have issues and where we need to have conversations and make sure we're all on the same page. So it does really help the teams in tracking that and knowing where we're at and the status. We did develop this report alongside the new process, which is really useful because, as you know, change can be hard for lots of people in the organization, and the fewer things that you can change along the way, the easier it's going to be. So this allowed us to give them a view, and actually automated, so obviously better, but the similar view to what they had been used to seeing. So they didn't have to totally get used to new reports and manually running them and all of that. It was just go here, send a link to somebody, pick your program, refresh, that's it. That's your status. And everybody's looking at the same report. So overall, the process as well as the report together have really increased visibility and documentation of all the issues. And actually, the most popular part of all of this was the Power BI report, and that's what's received the most positive feedback in all of this. So the last type of report I wanted to go over was for those design verification plans that I talked about earlier, which basically store the plans for our validation, our testing activities on programs. So that was a legacy system that we replaced a couple years ago, and Jeff Mayhew went over that at the conference a couple years ago. At that time, it was a fairly simple process. We had people doing very similar things to as the design review assessments, except obviously more validation than design side of things. As we did more and more programs, we added more and more complexity to that process. We added a lot of different custom columns that people had to fill out at certain times, say what kind of validation activity is it? Is it a full vehicle test or a shaker or bench calculation? All of that, and when is it going to be done? So we could use it later in reporting to say, are all the things we said that were going to be done by this gate, are they done? So we added a bunch of different custom columns like that because that's what we saw as a need in the process. Except those were only required under certain situations and only required at certain times. And the conformance states meant different things at different times. Early on in the program, we asked people if those requirements are good and set and everybody agrees on the targets and they're part of this, they're applicable to this program. And later we actually asked people, are we meeting the requirements? Did your test pass? That type of stuff. So it was kind of confusing for people at first because it was all time-based and situation-based, and if you weren't working in the system or working with the process every day, it was really hard for people to understand or remember. As well as we kept adding more and more stuff to it. So if you just did it the program before, you maybe didn't know about this other piece. We really needed an easy way to get people to understand and to have one place to give an overall completeness of the work taking place on a program. So what we did is we created one of these reports for every gate in our process that uses this DVP process. And as you can see in the bottom picture, but top right, it just gives one overall gauge of the percentage completion. So there's no questions on are we ready, how far are we, what else do we have to do. It's just you're 80% complete, you're not ready to go through this gate. Just making it that easy for people, as well as all the other visuals, walk people through what are you being measured on, what are all the different aspects of this deliverable that you need to do so that you can be 100% complete. So having each of the aspects that they need to complete, as well as that one measure of are we ready to go to the next phase, it's really actually helped drive completion of these deliverables, because as I said before, people didn't really know what they needed to do, and even the program management were having to export multiple times, get different views. Every program decided to do it a different way because it wasn't standardized at the time. So this gives that standardization, automation, and really helps people know what is expected of them. And then another thing that this does is it lists all of the open items and who is responsible for them, and summarizes it in an easy way for program teams to know who they need to talk to and the discussions that need to happen of why are these items still open, when are you going to get them done, all of that type of stuff. So it makes it easier than having to export and filter by, or like do a pivot table by person responsible for it. It's just easily there and says, these are the 3 things that are required for this gate, how many are open in each of those, so they even know not just that people have open items, but how many and of what type, so they know what they need to do. And we are using these live in gate meetings. So one of the big successes of this is we worked with the program management team that owns the templates for our gates, and we got these incorporated into those. So now, instead of people coming up with their own status reporting and exporting and manually doing all that, people just click the link, pick their programs, unfortunately screenshot it for now, put it in there. But we actually are also using these live in gates. We've had directors open up the reports and go through all the open items so that people have to speak to why is that still open, what are the problems, when are we going to get them done, all of that type of stuff. So that's a big move for us because everything we do at gate reviews is all screenshot and talk to it and kind of give people the story of what's going on. And this is just straightforward, you're red or green. This makes it really explicit. And because these were so successful with the DVPs and Auros data, we were actually asked to automate all of this, all of the other deliverables at these gates that we were able to. So that's when we started getting data from other systems and giving that easy view of are we ready or not, what are the open items, where do we need to have the discussions. So we are using all of that at all the gates. So what we've been able to do with Power BI has been really successful. Users really like having one place to go for all this different data across multiple systems. They like the explicitness and straightforwardness of what is expected of them and what the status is. We have groups using these in daily meetings or weekly meetings to help run the agenda so that they're not going across multiple systems, exporting. Everybody does it a different way, so maybe some people have different lists than others. People are just using the same information, going to the reports and looking at it live in meetings, which is pretty nice. And so we have a lot of different types of reports. Right now we have over 15 reports using Auros data, so obviously I just showed a couple examples today. And over the last 90 days, we have over like 400 people using those reports. So they are pretty popular. People are finding value in them. And people just keep asking us for more and more stuff. If you are going to implement anything like this, you will see that it'll definitely exponentially grow. People like to see this type of stuff. It makes their jobs easier, makes them more efficient. So we just keep getting asked to do more and more stuff that's kind of not in our realm, but we learn it, make it happen. And so we're just going to keep continuing to expand the tool, grow it throughout the organization, try to get other people learning this, how to do it, and incorporate more and more data from different systems. Because overall, this is making people's jobs better and faster. We've received a lot of positive feedback from all of this, and again, people just keep asking for more and more. And then we're also going to keep pushing people to use these live as much as they can, try to get away from screenshots, which is pretty much the same as exporting. Right the minute that you do it, it's out of date. So as much as we can get people to start using these in meetings to make decisions and start using it live, the better. So that's what we're going to continue to try to do. So I just wanted to go over some ideas of what you can do with tools like these today. There's obviously a lot more to it, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Understanding Auros at the database level is a lot of work. It's complex. It is doable, but it has allowed us to do a lot of custom reporting that people have really liked. People are pretty particular about what they want to see sometimes, especially management or leadership. Having to export and make very custom reports because that's what they need to see, and then it's different the next week. We don't have to worry about that anymore. We can give people what they want. We can create exactly how they want to see it and do different calculations, color coding, whatever it may be. And I would say using Power BI for this has definitely strengthened our usage of Auros in the organization. It's strengthened existing use cases as well as increase the potential for new projects moving forward. And it's definitely helped us further ingrain Auros into our organization. It's increased visibility of the work taking place, which some people didn't have before. It's clearly identified what's required of people at different steps and for each of the different workflows. And it's allowed us to really tie what the work that's taking place in Auros with the work taking place in all the other systems, which we've never been able to do before, but it's really allowing us to tie everything together to give that one easy view of where are we at, where are the problems, what do we need to be working on, what's the status. So with all this being said, it's been really helpful, but if you don't need this functionality or capability with how you're using Auros right now, don't worry about it. It's not necessary. Like I said before, we grew into this challenge. We were using the standard reports from Auros for years before we needed to do this, but at some point in your implementation of Auros, you may have your organization start relying on it so much and having it really part of all of your standard processes that people are going to need to see it in custom ways, and also integrated with the other systems where you guys are doing your work. So if this is where your organization is headed and your organization is trying to be more data-driven and have the data live to make decisions off of, this is a great opportunity. Get your Auros data in there. I'm sure Auros Chaos will be more than willing to help. Again, you guys have been super helpful doing this, so thank you, Sangeeta and Josh. And if you get there, obviously Power BI is just one data analytics package. There's tons of other options out there. That's just what we use at Navistar. There's Tableau and apparently Click, which I've never heard of. But there's a bunch out there, so definitely look into that. And whatever you use, there's a lot of opportunity with this. Basically just limited by what you can think of and what you can get the data for. Otherwise, the sky's the limit. And again, we just, I just summarized some of this today, so if any of you guys have any questions or want to see any of these reports live, I can pop up my computer, we can look at them. I'll be around. So with that, I'll open up to questions.
So, Vicki DeLugo, Keki Shipbuilder. Obviously, we're beginning the journey in shipbuilding, and it seems like you guys there are power users and power knowledge-aware people. Right at the beginning of your presentation, I think I saw 2,100 users, and I gathered the 7 years of experience. I think I heard you got hundreds of COPs. Mm-hmm. So now my question is, how many, and I don't even know if it's important or not, but I was wondering how many KPAX you actually manage within your groups.
I'm
Well,
not
is
sure.
it thousands, tens of thousands?
Tens of thousands. I
Tens
would
of
say.
thousands. 20,000? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. That was my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Ron Messick with GM. Can you help me understand the value in tracking and driving vitality? Because my understanding of vitality was it's supposed to be an accurate representation of the utility of that thing at that time. And it seems that tracking that as a metric is kind of encouraging bad behavior. I don't understand can you help me understand that value?
Sure. I guess I would say that vitality is a measure of the health or the usability of that KPAC, how it's being used, if it's being kept up to date. When we use it, do we meet that requirement, or are we constantly being read on it? If so, we should probably look at that. And I know the Auros guys have really built up what that is calculating to try to say, is that KPAC good, and what is the health of that? So I think it's just one of the measures that we chose to take for our COPs and for our KPACs, just because it's already in the system and we didn't have to calculate our own measurement of that.
Hi, it's Mike O'Clair from Ford Motor Company. So I actually wanted to help maybe answer that question
Okay.
too, in giving an example of how we use it. So one of the first valuable things that we found with the vitality reports is we could look across programs and we could actually see, is the same requirement always read across or many programs? What is it about that requirement that's making it always be marked red? Is it the wrong question at the wrong time? Is it a requirement that can't be met? Is it, but it involved investigations into identifying what I'll call bad KPAX, or maybe just timed wrong or other reasons, but it enabled us to actually improve the right questions at the right time. And another example with the vitality reports is you can actually catch things that you didn't think you would catch, like somebody wrote a new rule and you're looking at it, it's not getting used, it's not getting into the assessments, and there could be a reason why it's not getting into the assessments. Maybe somebody misclassified it, and so where you thought it should have been used, it's not getting used at all, and so it's declining in its vitality because it's just not in the game. And then probably a third way, I almost drew a blank on my third way here, just one second. So a third way on the vitality reports is, shoot, I'm going to forget it. So, but the short story is that we use it to improve, the KPAX, and we find it's the opposite. It doesn't encourage bad behavior. It helps identify that they're being used well, and since it's actually graphical as well, I think that was the third thing I was going to say. Since it's graphical, another kind of side benefit that we also notice is that if a KPAC author or a subject matter expert or an owner modified their KPAC, we've actually seen cases where they modified a KPAC to improve it, and then you could actually see that the vitality report started dropping after their last modification. So when they made a change with the intent to improve it, quite the opposite has happened. Or they did make a change to improve it, and you can actually visually see through the graphs that it will give you that indeed, in fact, it did improve. The usage improved, the vitality improved. So you could literally use it to see that the updates that you've made to your KPAX either had a negative impact or a positive impact for the based on what you've changed. Mm-hmm. So short story is we find them quite valuable, and we use them all the time to improve our KPAX.
Mm-hmm. So. Thank you for that. I think does that help explain the answer? I mean, by no means do I think that that's the only measure for KPAX or for COPs. That's why we added the other measures for that technical memory maturity. I think it's just one measure, like this man said, to just raise awareness of what's happening, and then you obviously need to do the research and to understand why that happened, why it's not getting used, or why the vitality is decreasing.
I follow to a large degree. However, if you have a KPAC on an 8-track tape, you want that to decrease in vitality, and it's good. You don't want to artificially take an 8-track tape player and put it back in an assessment because it's supposed to be turning red. So that's kind of where I understand you want to track things accurately, but it seems like it's having the goal be to make it green and not to make it right.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I guess I would say this is part of, I don't remember, somebody mentioned it in their presentation of keeping the database up to date and making that list maintainable. So if it's getting red and it's an A-track, something about an A-track, which I don't think we use at all anymore, I would say you should be obsoleting or closing out those KPACs so nobody uses them. So as that happens, I think the vitality just goes away or is not part of the calculation. So that's what I would say. Okay.
One more question to delay lunch for everyone. This is Mauro from ZF. First of all, congratulations for your presentation. It was really interesting, as the others were as well. And you mentioned in the beginning that you had to learn data modeling, data analytics. How did you obtain that? Did you do by yourself? You contact Power BI support? And how critical do you think that was for your success?
There's a lot of training out there, especially for Power BI that Microsoft has put out. I think I did maybe like an hour of that training, and the rest just kind of taught myself using that. Database-wise and data structure, Auros KS helped out a lot with that on how the tables work together, and here's example SQL statements that you can use, which I didn't know about at all before. So you're definitely going to have to I think, teach yourself. There's nothing out there that's going to teach you the specific examples that you're trying to do. And I find that if you have a problem you're trying to solve, an exact report you're trying to create, that's the easiest, that's the best way to learn it. Otherwise, you can take training and forget everything because you're not applying it. So that's probably it.
Nick Cassidy from Navistar. Another big thing that we're using that maturity report for as one of the actual system owners of the COPs is that vitality is helping us and triggering us that we need to relook at potentially the sets and the flagging of how that data and that KPAX is being actually provided and out into the sets. So in the case of the 8-track tape, it's okay, we need to move that and take it out of an active set. We may still want to keep the KPAX active. We don't have to archive it, but we don't want that getting put into every stereo car KPAX set that is going to go out so that they can mark it not applicable. As we're bringing on these other support groups that are now adding KPAX and adding that knowledge, we're finding a lot of that of they're like, they aren't users of the system yet, so they're documenting and saying, oh, well, every time you do a release, we want you to be aware of frame piercing and this guidance. And because they're now using that vitality report, they're seeing that, wait a second, that doesn't apply every time you do a release. I'm in the interiors group. I could care less about frame piercing. I don't need to know about what's going on in the frame rails because nothing that I have is outside of the cab. So every time it goes through our release group, they're flagging it as not applicable. It's dropping that vitality score. He's then looking at it and saying, well, why is that going on? He investigates, sees that, oh, well, this is what's driving it down. Maybe I need to redo those sets, change my extended elements, change the flagging, and improve its usage so I'm delivering the correct set of knowledge at the right time and not just I am providing knowledge. We heavily are pushing back to many of the executives or those that review it that things that are red and yellow are not bad. Things that are red and yellow need discussed and talked about. That is a paradigm shift for many that come from the red, yellow, green old school Excel visualization tool. And it's no, red and yellow is let's talk about it. Red and yellow is a compromise or a change, whether it's on an assessment or whether it's in a vitality score. It's not that it's bad. It's just engineering made compromises, made trade-offs to get to where you're at.
It's hard to believe that 2.5 years ago, she had never heard of Knowledge Aware or Auros or anything like that. So I think that's what you call a quick study. So Megan, way to go. That was awesome.